Yes, sir. Welcome back to Talking Nets, episode 71. Keith McPherson and Hudson Flynn joining you on Monday, January 4th, the first Monday of the year. The Nets have lost four of their last five. The Nets are 3-4. The Nets are searching for answers, and so are we. Hudson Flynn, how are you doing on this Monday morning?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm excited to be back talking Nets. I'm excited that the new year can finally get in the swing of things. It feels like, now we have this Monday, work starts back up, school starts back up, all everything's moving towards, going back to some more normalcy. And, I love, when I get my time off, I love my vacation. I love the new year. I love the holidays. I love all that. But, in 2021, it almost feels nice to be getting back to a little more of a sense of normalcy and going back to work, going back to school. So I'm excited, and I'm excited to talk about these Nets because I have a lot to say. I know you have a lot to say. I know everyone on our Twitter, on our Instagram has a lot to say. So I'm just excited to work through some of the problems that the Nets might be facing.
Yeah, I feel like that's what this podcast is for. Everybody's talking Nets. We've been talking Nets. Shout out to all our day ones. And no matter what the Nets go through, this is like therapy for Nets fans. This is like a safe space to come and talk and air your grievances and tell us how much you hate Thomas Bryant. And we'll talk to you about what we see out there, what we think. But I got to remind some folks that we're just fans. We're not analysts. I have a confession to make. I didn't play professional basketball. I didn't play college basketball. The highest level of competition I got to in basketball was my 13-year-old AAU team. Hudson, how far did you get in your hoop dreams?
Not even that far, not even that far. But we're both fans though, and we're exactly as much of Nets fans as anyone else is. And, as fans, I think we have a unique position to be able to talk to the fans, to maybe talk them off of that ledge, but also to, address some things we've been seeing in these games, some things that, may not just be aberrations, may not just be one-off things, maybe are some signs of the future, some signs of some things that Nash and, the boys might have to fix going forward.
All right, so let's get into it. These are 30-minute pods, maybe 35 max. We're switching now to our format where we're covering the games. We're not going to give you a full hour, but we'll give you at least two episodes a week talking about the game. So let's talk about last night's game. The Wizards are in Brooklyn. We've got the 6-game homestand. The Wizards come in 1-5, one of the worst defenses in the league, giving up, I think I saw they were giving up the third most points in the league. So I'm thinking, hey, we got KD and Kyrie out there. 7-Eleven is open. We should just outscore these guys. And now it was a high scoring game. The Nets lose game 7 of 72, 123 to 122 in heartbreaking fashion. Where do we start here, man? Where do we start, Hudson? I guess, I mean, I'll throw it to you because I have literally a page of just frustrated notes and takes from the game that were just things that I saw last night.
Yeah, so I thought this game was interesting because it wasn't like a debacle like the second game we played against the Hawks. There were a lot of highlights, a lot of things to take away from it. 7-Eleven was absolutely open, like you said. I mean, they finished the game with 30 points and 28 points with Kyrie and Katie, respectively. So that was open. We got a lot of highlights. Katie was trying to end people's careers early. We had DeAndre Jordan, with some offensive holding to stop, what could have been like the dunk of the season so far for this team with KD over, the entire Wizards team. But there were a lot of negatives, and they were kind of masked by the fact that the team was scoring and they were keeping up. And, the Nets were hitting their shots at one point. I think they were like 7 of like 11 or something like that. And they were like really falling, and that was great. And we saw TLC was 4 of 4 from three at one point. Kyrie and KD were hitting their shots. Joe Harris was hitting his shots. Everyone was playing well. But then we saw some cracks start to form, and those cracks came with the second unit. And, we spent the whole offseason talking about how good our second unit is and how excited we are to see them play and how this team's depth is really going to be its hallmark. And there's certainly some early season growing pains with that depth. Landry Shamet, 17 minutes. 0 for 1. No contributions to this team. Karis LeVert, more minutes, a lot more shots, barely any more of a contribution. We saw Karis LeVert have, boy, we love our guy, but it was a bad game. He just played poorly. He couldn't do it. He tried to, step back three his way out of a slump, and that has never worked for him. But for some reason, he decided to keep doing it. And we just saw a messy, messy team, especially from that second unit. But the messiness didn't really stop in the first unit. They were scoring, but they were turning the ball over, just as much as they were scoring, finished the game with 20 plus turnovers again. That's not sustainable. And, Katie and Kyrie know it's sustainable. Katie went out there and said, that's unacceptable. Earlier in the press conference, Steve Nash tried to say, we're going to get some of these turnovers just based on the way we play. Katie was like, no, I shouldn't be turning the ball over that much. He's holding himself accountable, which, for one, I do think is a good dynamic to have between coach and superstar. The coach can be supportive and the superstar always wants to correct himself and to, fix his flaws. And I like that kind of mentality we had. But, aside from that, aside from the bench not scoring, aside from all the turnovers, it's the same problems. Like I said, it's just the defense didn't play well. The rebounding wasn't good enough. Jared Allen didn't play enough minutes, got benched the last 8 minutes down the stretch to, play Jeff Green in a small ball 5. And yeah, when that lineup was out there, they outscored the Wizards 22-21, which I see some people kind of claiming as a victory on Twitter. I don't see it as a victory, considering we should be outscoring the Wizards more than 22-21,
Yeah.
just in general.
Yeah.
And I think we might have if we had the player who was first in offensive rebound percentage and second in total rebound percentage going into the game. And it just seems to me like I'm beating my head against the wall talking about putting Jared Allen in and all these numbers and all these things when every game we see him not play crunch time minutes, not play the most minutes and all that stuff just for, us to get to the press conference. And, people are asking what went wrong this game. And Nash always goes, rebounding, defense. Jared Allen played a career game. He had, a reverse dunk like on the baseline. He
Amazing.
had 2 huge blocks. He was flying out of the gym. It was ridiculous. And we didn't get any of that. We didn't get any of that down the stretch. And, when you see Kyrie trying to box out Thomas Bryant for a late rebound, I feel like you have to realize that there's a problem there, because that's not how this team was built. That's not how this team is supposed to be playing. That's not what's supposed to be happening. And honestly, it's the early season. There's, a level of overreaction that you're trying to avoid. And there's a level of reading too much into things that you're trying to avoid. But it seems like these problems keep coming up and they aren't, debilitating problems with the team, more as things that could just be fixed based on, giving other people an opportunity, such as Jared Allen, such as Bruce Brown, our guy that can't seem to play any more than garbage time minutes when his defense, his presence on the team is exactly what we're looking for. So it's really just frustrating as a fan, but, it's got to be frustrating as a player because, think about Jared Allen. He goes out there and plays some of the best basketball in his career in back-to-back games and can't play more crunch time minutes than DeAndre Jordan, than Jeff Green. And, we support the players on our team who are getting those minutes, but at a certain point, we need the best players to be getting the best minutes, and it doesn't seem like they are right now.
Yeah, bro. You said a few things that obviously I agree with. Mostly everything you said, I agree with. And I'll try and go back and hit some of them before we move on to the Hawks. But I wanted to say with this game last night, this Wizards game, I wanted to put out there that the officiating sucked. And no, we can't blame the officials when we turn the ball over 20 times, but the officiating sucked the whole game. It was bad on both sides. There were late whistles. It was like the refs weren't seeing the game. They weren't seeing what was happening, or they were seeing something different. And then the Nets looked visibly frustrated, like Kyrie on the ground yelling. When you mentioned Karras, it hurts to see our guy Karras struggle right now. I feel like he knows his game, but he wants his game to evolve into something else that's not there yet. And he keeps forcing those threes. He keeps forcing those shots. Even when he gets in the paint, he has a look for a floater or a mid-range jumper, and he's dishing it out to Shamit or somebody, and it's just like not going right for him. And when we're talking about the officiating, there was a part in the game where, Karras was looking for a foul on a drive. He didn't get it. He didn't run back on defense. He's barking at the refs, and he has to foul Russell Westbrook out of frustration. And I'm looking at the Nets like, are we serious right now? Like, this is how we're playing with no fans. Can you imagine if there were fans, right? This is a fan talking to a fan with fans listening to the podcast. Could you imagine what it would sound like if we were in the arena with this
No,
confusion?
that was one of the things people talked about on Twitter from the last 2 games. There would be boos, there'd be all that garbage coming down. There would be, more noise. And actually, the one thing I will say, I'll just, cut in here really quickly, is almost good thing there aren't, because as fans, we get to hear a lot of these conversations that are being had on the court, with Kyrie, with KD, with players like Jared Allen, with Joe Harris. And, this was the first time I think we saw Kyrie and KD become really animated with the players on our team, trying to coach them up and make them better. So that was one positive I'll just slip in there, well, before you keep going.
And I love that, right? Man, there was some type of weird omen going on, or some type of poetic justice last night, because, you know, things that Kyrie said literally both came to fruition last night. Kyrie was on the Etceteris podcast with Katie, and when they talked about the hiring of Steve Nash, he said, any night, any of us could be head coach. You know, I don't really see it as like, we like, he said something along those lines. And then you're looking last night at KD coaching up Joe Harris, like every other possession, he's got something to tell Joe Harris, which is good, because I think they have a good relationship, and their relationship is developing. And I think that this team's relationship around Katie and Kyrie has to develop, man. I thought the refs were starstruck last night because they didn't know how to call shit. But I started looking at the Nets like maybe they're starstruck too. Maybe they are over respecting Katie and Kyrie's game and getting away from the team game. Like, when you hear Kyrie talk about over helping, or even when he's getting switched on and he ends up, I think I've seen at least 2 or 3 times that he ends up with Thomas Bryant on him, and it's just not right. And then when he called the timeout, he called that timeout because they inbounded the ball, and I think Hachimura just dunked it, and there was confusion, and Kyrie's looking to the sideline like, yo, call timeout. And that was him saying any night, any of us could be a head coach, coming to fruition in like a poetic justice type of way. Like, now your head coach, like, I hate to say it, Steve Nash is young in his head coaching like career. He's 7 games in. There's times when we need him to call timeouts, and he hasn't called timeouts, not just in his Wizards game. Like, he's got to figure that out. I would love for Mike D'Antoni and Jacques Vaughn to be nudging him like, hey, we should call a timeout here. That's why we have those 2 guys with him. But the other thing that Kyrie said was, I can look down the roster on this team, and I know there's another guy on this team that can make that final shot, that can take and make that final shot. And then we get down to the last 7 seconds. We have possession. Kyrie shoots a 3, clunks it, but where does it go? Right to 7-11 with the chance to win the game. Katie misses a shot. It's back-to-back misses. It was just odd to me, like, that went down like that. LeBron had a great game yesterday. Guys like Steph Curry going off in the league yesterday. Katie and Kyrie, yeah, they went for 28 and 30, but for the way we lost that game, man, it was rough. It was I don't know, it was a tough pill to swallow for me, because I'm like, man, maybe they need to say less. And I know it's early, right? We're 10% of the way through this 72-game season. But now, Steve Nash says it's good for us. They need to focus up and fix these issues now. Because as fans, we're looking at the team like, why is Jared Allen not playing? Where is Bruce Brown? Why do we make a move to get Bruce Brown and we're not even giving him run with the second unit? There's just a lot of little things. Shout out to Taurean Prince. I want to say he played better. We saw him, Hudson clipped him shooting after the Hawks lost the second game against the Hawks, getting shots up. He played better. Landry Shamwow. He was not Shamwow. We miss you, Spencer Dinwiddie. I really felt that in these last couple games. I'm like, Spencer, like, this would have been the time of the season where like, you know, those first 2 games that we won, people were saying Spencer Dinwiddie doesn't fit with the first unit. Well, I feel like we could have used him in the last couple games. I don't know. There's so
He's
much in
that
my notes,
glue.
but yeah, he's the glue guy.
He's the
Yo, and shout
glue.
out to
He's
the
the
glue guys.
shout out to the glue guys.
The glue
Yeah.
guys gave us a shout out on their podcast Monday. They mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie and they compared him to Vegeta. You know, they say he's like self-serving, but he's also great on Twitter. And they were, you know, basically saying how much it hurts to lose Spencer. How do you not love a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie? And we're seeing we might have to make some trades. We might have to make some moves, something. Because we could use Spencer right now and we don't have him. What are your final thoughts on this Wizards game? I'll get mine together before we move on to the 2 games against the Hawks.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, uh, Kyrie Irving, his press conferences are immaculate.
Hey, and that's why he
Every
doesn't want to
time,
talk to the media.
every time he goes and sits at that table, he his press conferences are literally perfect, and I think they have to be because he's Kyrie Irving and he's kind of going to get hate no matter what he says, so might as well, reduce some of that. But some of the things that he said was just like so on point and like so what Nets fans needed to hear, especially after we have, Coach Nash going out there and saying, maybe this loss was a good thing. It's all a learning experience. And then you have Kyrie out there holding himself and the team accountable and, saying things like, there's no disconnect. It's just basketball. We just have to play better at basketball. We have to be a better basketball team. And like, yeah, that's like what the Nets kind of need right now. They need to just focus on being a better basketball team. And he also went out and he said, listen, we're just out here preparing for getting 16 wins in the playoffs. And just hearing all of those things and him saying that, he's here for the long haul. He's not just here for 2 or 3 years. He's here through all of it. And shout out to our guy, Matt Brooks. He almost got in some hot water by only posting part of that clip. And then he he needed the assist from Talking Nets to get the full part of that clip
Yeah,
out.
I saw that.
But no, it was just like, Kyrie is coming out there and he's being that calming voice, that calming factor, that coaching factor. And for as much as people hated on him for saying, anyone could be a coach on any night, I think it's both warranted that he said that, and it's a good thing that he said that, because tonight we saw, him coaching up last night we saw him coaching up Jared Allen. We saw, the Joe Harris stuff, all of that stuff. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. And I was running the Twitter last night. I almost got myself into some hot water because I put out a tweet that said, it was a video of Kyrie Irving coaching up Jared Allen. And I said they were getting into it. I didn't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a positive way.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this team needs. And I think that if they can bring that energy in practice and every day, this Nets team is going to be better off for it. And I just hope going into the future that it is going to make a market improvement, because if it doesn't, then this Nets team isn't in a great spot, without having Spencer Dinwiddie to be that linking unit between the first and second, group of guys. And, not having Bruce Brown and not playing the right defense, not putting out Jared Allen. So I think if we can just keep learning and growing and meshing as a team, meshing that we might not have been able to do because we didn't have a training camp, I think this team is okay. Obviously, we're only 7 games into the season, but I think the team does have some things that it needs to fix, and I think they've recognized that they need to fix it and that they're going to be on the right path to do so going forward.
And let these guys get into it. I have no problem with Kyrie, a 10-year vet, getting at Jared Allen, telling him where he needs to be or what he needs to do or what he's seeing out there. Yes, coach these guys up. I love KD giving positive reinforcement to Joe Harris. They got Joe Harris going early and late last night. I love to see that because the nickname I gave him, a Broadway Joe, always ready for the bright lights. He was ready in the fourth quarter. He had back-to-back threes when we needed him. It was heartbreaking at the end, but all in all, there's just too many fouls early, too many turnovers early. I saw something like the Wizards shot 23 more times than us, and like that's not good. This is a game we should have won. It sucks to lose by a point. Thomas Bryant is my least favorite Wizard. TLC is my favorite Net. When he was talking shit to Bradley Beal, I was so proud. I'm like, yo, this guy has English as a second language, and he can like get his message through to Bradley Beal, where Bradley Beal's looking at KD like, yo, you better get your boy. And I think Frank Isola on the Brooklyn Nets post-game pregame show was like, don't poke the bear. I was kind of shook. I thought Bradley Beal was going to kill us because we've seen him kill us before, but I'll take that little 27 from Brad Beal. All in all, with this game, like I said, it's just sloppy and it's growing pains. And these guys do need to get into it. Steve Nash said, they're getting it's uncomfortable and they got to get uncomfortable. Yes, if you want progress, you have to get uncomfortable. You have to be in these situations where you're forced to figure it out. When we lost to the Hawks, supposedly they said we didn't even practice the next day. We just watched film. And now we'll start talking about the Hawks series just because we're running low on time. But it's tough to play a team back-to-back games in the same arena in 3 nights. We played them on Wednesday. Great win, high-scoring game, last win of 2020. Then we come in and start the new year, and it was a completely different game, and the Hawks controlled that game. Lob City, dunking on us, spreading the ball around. Like, let's talk about the first game. Let me not get too far ahead. Let's talk about the first game. The first game was fun. The first game was like, okay, you know what you're getting. You're getting Trae Young coming in here, Cam Reddish, John Collins, these guys. They got a deeper team this year, a different look team around Trae Young. Shout out to Trae Young. I saw him at Coachella 2 years ago at the Adidas party. You got to just take my word for it. I don't have any pictures or videos because I was in a party where they take your phone and they lock it up and you can't get it back. But yeah, Trae Young had the like Benjamin Button hair going on, but he still was in VIP doing his thing. Not too many broads with him. He had his homies with him, but I feel like my energy crossed paths with his. I didn't say what's up to him, but I was close to him. And then I put out a video of Steve Nash saying that's not basketball. And surprisingly, that did very well in the NBA circles. What else from that game? What did you get from the first game against the Hawks that we won? It was game 5 of 72. Nets won 145-141.
Certainly didn't get any defense from that game. Damn. That
Nowhere.
was and anyone who betted the over, that was that was a big day for you. But no, it was really just our 3-point shooting was there, and it was exactly as there as it was, as it could be. And it was exactly as there as it was for the Hawks. And the Nets were able to keep up with a team that honestly, I think is a more consistent 3-point shooting team than us. They have shooters absolutely, up and down the bench. They have, Kevin Herter coming off in the second unit. He had like 5 steals and like 6 3-pointers. Like, I don't know how the
Yeah.
Nets are supposed to stop that when they can't play defense on anybody. But, like you alluded to a little before, and, I'm going to give you credit if you're not going to give yourself credit. Keith went out and he clipped up some tape of, Steve Nash not being too happy with Trae Young for backing into our guy TLC and getting fouled. And, before we talk about that video and how that did, I just think it's kind of ridiculous. Going into that game, the second game we played against the Hawks, Trae Young hadn't taken less than 14 free throws in a single game.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's insane. That
He
is
was getting
so
to the line at a ridiculous clip.
And like, first off, this is like, don't hate the player, hate the game. I'm not going to hate on Trae Young for getting fouled and doing that because that's getting him free points. He's automatic at the line. I think at some point he's going to start getting fouled a little harder than he's been getting fouled, if he's going to be getting those fouls anyway, and that might, end up being worse for him in the long run. But I don't have any hate for him for doing that. I just think, he's found an exploit in the way the game is being called, and it makes it worse.
Right.
It makes it boring. It's not basketball. It's not fun. Trae Young is such a fun young player. I want to see him go out and take those 50-foot threes, do all that stuff. I don't want to see him, jumping backwards into TLC so that he can get 2 shots at the foul line. Like, that's just not what I like. And Keith, just like, I run the Twitter when the games are being played, but when you put that video out, and that might have been our best video we've put out since, the first game of last season.
Yeah, bro.
With that whole Kyrie Irving circus shots. And that was crazy. We had people picking up our video, cropping out our logo, trying to use your analysis, but you had your voice going over it. And that was just, that That was a big moment for Talking Nets. That got like damn near like a million views. Just
We
great
here,
stuff.
bro. We here, bro.
We're here.
They can't say we're not on. Like we're in the NBA Twitter sphere. We're in NBA circles. This is our second year doing NBA content. I had never done any NBA content before this. This was a John Boy Media idea that, Hudson and I were the two Nets fans connected to John Boy Media when it was time to start talking Nets. And we started it for this moment and we're in it now. And man, I was getting so much love. Like people were sending me the video on Instagram. They're like, yo, this is your voice. This is your podcast, right? And just so much was going on from that game Wednesday. Chris Sheeran gave us a shout out during the broadcast from one of your tweets where you were like, why even play defense on KD? And that's true because like nobody can check KD. And so it was dope to see that. And then I'll tell you a story about the video quickly. So I listened to the Nets Chris Carino, WFAN, the Nets broadcast on the radio after the game sometime if I have stuff to do and I can't watch the post-game press conference. And I'm listening to Chris Carino talk about Trae Young, and he was basically giving Steve Nash props like, yo, we're actually seeing Steve Nash like become a coach in front of our eyes. Like, he got into it with the ref, and that's the most animated we've seen him. And then I was listening to that in the shower laughing, and they were talking about Trae Young and how he was drawing these fouls. And I'm like, I got to go clip that. And I think I texted you and I was like, yo, did you get the clip of Nash getting animated with the ref? Like we got to clip that. Luckily, I remembered that Trae Young's last foul like that was around the 6-minute mark in the fourth. A lot of these like basketball coaches and I don't even care, but like all these people in the basketball circles were commenting like, oh, well, you didn't notice his hand on his hip. Oh, like it is a foul. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't care about that. I'm a Nets fan. This is Talking Nets. And I'm also part of John Boy Media. I guess by osmosis, I wasn't even trying to make a mini breakdown. It was like a 1-minute breakdown, kind of in the style that John Boy does with the like lip reading and the voiceover and a little comedy mixed in. I swear to you, I did one take and I realized my mic wasn't recording. So I was like, okay, I got to do another take. I did another take, did it, put it out, and I went to sleep. The next day, I'm like, yo, this is doing numbers. Then I'm seeing Statline posted. I'm seeing top basketball coverage posted. When I saw sideline sources posted it, I'm like, whoa. I'm like, yo, Talking Nets, we on. We broke 2,500 followers on Twitter. Man, it's a good time. And, in saying that, I want to say, like, it's early in this NBA season. We can't be too worried about these scores. I'll tell you when it's time to panic, and we'll know when it's time to panic. We're Nets fans. We've seen us lose 8 games in a row, back-to-back years. We've seen us blow it in overtime. We've seen us miss game-winning shots like that plenty. So, I guess back to the Hawks game as we wrap this up. Out of the Hawks game and series, I think the Atlanta Hawks are better than people are giving them credit for. Shout out to my guy Cam Reddish, Duke. He's taken a step forward. You talked about Herder, Collins, John Collins just dunking on our heads and like disrespecting us. They're young and they have some veterans mixed in. And we're talking about the Nets depth. No, the Nets don't have depth. The Hawks showed us what depth is. When you have guys coming off the bench and they're giving you double digits, like you have guys like Bogdanovich coming off the bench in that first game, gave us 20-22. And then in the next game, where is it? I don't even know. We don't have to crunch the numbers too much, but the last thing I'll say about the Hawks game is, we had them in back-to-back games in Brooklyn. It's tough to play a team back-to-back. That's not what the NBA ever really does. And, we split. In baseball, when there's double headers, you hope to take 2. You expect to take at least 1. We split with them. It's going to be all right. Hudson, what else do you got on the Atlanta Hawks 2-game series in Brooklyn?
Yeah, I mean, it showed that John Collins is exactly the player that the Nets cannot defend ever. This has been a thing his entire
Points in the
career.
paint.
Whenever he plays against the Nets, he turns into like a combination of like prime AD mixed with prime Shaq. I don't know how he does it. It's ridiculous. Like they were throwing lobs off the backboard, and like yeah, they were playing against a third unit, but that's still embarrassing in like a loss where we didn't even put up 100 points, throwing lobs off the backboard, ridiculous. And it exposed some of the Nets' weaknesses, and I got excited because I thought that it was a loss like that was going to kind of kickstart the Nets, and they'd be like, oh, okay, we gotta have more rim protection, we gotta have more points in the paint. We got to be able to do all this and all that. It didn't necessarily do it right away, but when you have losses like that, there's not too many positives you can take away from it. So I'm just going to do my best to look on the bright side, because as Nets fans, we've spent our entire fan career, looking at the dark side of things and, realizing, oh, this isn't going to work. D'Lo's probably not going to stay. Maybe we should re-sign him. He's the best player that's ever going to be a part of this franchise. We're never going to be like we were. We're always going to be second class, all that stuff. It seems like Nets fans have gotten a little impatient. They thought that, this season we were going to go 72-0, but we didn't have an offseason. We're a new team. There's going to be growing pains. And obviously we're seeing these growing pains on the court. And I just, I hope and I know, when you have two players like Katie and Kyrie, they're not going to let your team be bad. We're not going to have a losing record. We're not going to not be a good team. We're going to be a good team. Just give the team a second to figure out where it's at and what it needs to keep doing to be successful going forward. And that's like my closing thoughts for this podcast really is, yes, we covered 2 losses and 1 win. Yes, the Nets are 3-4. Yes, they don't look great 7 games into the season. Those first 2 games, those first 2 blowout wins against the Warriors and the Celtics, that feels like a distant memory, but this is a long season and we're very early into it. And, we're seeing across the league, a lot of teams have some weird starts. The Toronto Raptors, the Tampa Bay Raptors are 1-5 to start the season. The Celtics lost to the Pistons, and there's all these things that are like, okay, teams need time to gel. They need time to mesh. They need time to get into, midseason form. And the Nets are taking their time and they're putting it together. And with players like Katie and Kyrie, and with coaches like, D'Antoni, Vaughn, and Nash, I don't expect it to last very long that we're having these negative type podcasts.
Yeah, the Miami Heat are 2-3. What's going on with them? I don't know. There's a few teams. The Mavericks, the Nuggets, they're both sitting at 2-4. It is early. And trust me, when it's not early, I will not be saying it is early, but it is early. And like Hudson said, Katie and Kyrie, they're like setting the pedigree. They're setting the standard of like how the Brooklyn Nets will play through the next few years. They're changing the culture, right? This isn't Kenny Atkinson's culture anymore. This isn't D'Lo's culture that he was like. This isn't the bench mob dancing on the sidelines, right? Like we're far away from that. This thing needs to be molded and shaped and built through the course of the regular season, and it will be. I expect us to be a playoff team. I expect us to be right when the games matter the most. But like Rome wasn't built in a day. That is a cliche thing to say, but it holds true. And lastly, I'll say Jared Allen is a grown man. Let that grown man play like he's a grown man. Free Bruce Brown. Like we have nothing to lose by letting that guy loose. And yeah, other than that, it is a learning process. We have a first year head coach. It's Katie's first year back after 560 some days. We gonna be all right. And I guess I'll play this last voicemail for you guys for inspiration.
Fucking KD and Kyrie taking the Nets to the fucking Super Bowl, baby. To the fucking Super Bowl, baby. It's KD and Kyrie. They're taking us to the Super Bowl. All right.
So Katie and Kyrie are going to lead us to the Super Bowl. We'll worry about the playoffs when we get to the playoffs. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you rate this podcast. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend about this podcast. Follow us at Talking Nets on Twitter, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook. Follow John Boy Media across platforms. You can follow me at Keith McPherson on Instagram, Twitter, everywhere else. Hudson Flynn, where can they find you?
You can follow me at Hudson Flynn _ Facebook, Twitter, the whole thing.
Listen, follow my guy Hudson. He's putting all his time into building the brand under the Talking Nets account, but we need to get him over 2,000 followers. I said we just broke 2,500. We got Rob Perez sharing one of our videos. Like we are officially in there. So stay with us, Nets fans. Talking Nets fam. It's a long journey and a long ride, but we've been through a lot worse. Hudson and I will be back. We've got the Jazz coming up. This is a 6-game homestand. We'll be back after the next few games to talk it over with you guys. Keep your heads up. Let's go Nets. Brooklyn.
We go hard, go